जयन्ती मङ्गलकाली भद्रकाली कपालिनी दुर्गा क्षमा शिवा धात्री स्वाहा स्वधा नमोऽस्तु ते कालरात्रि नमोऽस्तु ते. The power of the Divine Mother Adiparashakti is unfathomable. She is limitless and infinite. She is beyond time, space, and causation and pervades everything. In one of my older videos, we saw how the power of Adiparashakti Mother Kali transformed Totapuri's beliefs and how she revealed her power to the hardcore Advaitin Totapuri. In this video, I will narrate as to how the Divine Mother showed the highest spiritual experience of Nirvikalpa Samadhi to Swami Vivekananda, who was formerly known as Narendranath. This is a verbatim narration from the book titled Life of Swami Vivekananda by his Eastern and Western disciples, published by Advaita Ashrama, Mayavati. As the end of the Master Sri Ramakrishna came nearer, Narendranath's hankering after the realization of God increased and intensified. His heart was like a seething cauldron. One day, Sri Ramakrishna initiated Naren with the name of Rama, telling him that it was the mantra which he had received from his own Guru. In consequence of this, Naren's emotions were stirred to tremendous heights. Towards the evening, he began to encircle the house, repeating the name of the Lord, Rama, Rama, in a high and excited voice. All outward consciousness had apparently gone, and he was full of ecstatic fire. When the master was informed of this, he only said, "Let him be, he will come around in due course." The emotional storm subsided in a few hours, and Naren became his old self again. The master said, "Look at the wonderful state of Narendra. There was a time when he did not believe in the personal aspect of God. Now see how he pants for realization." Then he gave a hint that Naren would soon reach his goal. Now we come to the greatest moment of Naren's sadhana, the very crest and glory of his spiritual realizations. Ever since the master had initiated him into the intellectual and spiritual awareness of Advaita Vedanta, he was pining for a vision of the Absolute. He prayed to feel divinity, to have the whole of nature erased from the tablets of perception, to lose the eye in order to plunge into the region of true being which is even beyond thought. Such was Naren's prayer to Sri Ramakrishna. Naren wanted to realize the very spirit of the Upanishads and be able to say from experience that which is the last utterance of human soul and the first note of divine consciousness. Aham Brahmasmi, I am Brahman. Naren had teased the master for this realization, but of no avail. One evening, however, it came unexpectedly. He was meditating when suddenly he felt a light at the back of his head, as if a torchlight had been placed there. It became more and more brilliant, larger and larger, and finally seemed to burst. His mind became merged in it. What transpired then in his consciousness was beyond words, for that absolute state is beyond description. Afterwards, he wrote some verses, the hymn of Samadhi, which best illustrate that exalted condition. It was all still and quiet in the room where Naren and Gopal Senior were meditating. Suddenly, Gopal heard Naren cry out, "Gopala, Gopala, where is my body?" In partially descending from that state, Naren had consciousness only of his head. His body seemed lost. "Why, Naren? It is there," answered Gopala, startled beyond description as he looked at Naren's rigid body. He then hastened for help to Sri Ramakrishna and found him in a state of intense calm, his countenance deeply serious, as though he knew what was happening in the next room. In reply to Gopal's demand for aid for Naren, he said, "Let him stay in that state for a while. He has teased me long enough for it." About 9 o'clock at night, Naren began to show faint signs of returning consciousness. When he regained full consciousness of physical world, he found himself surrounded by his anxious brother disciples. Memory came back. He felt as though he was bathed in ineffable peace. His heart was full to overflowing with ecstasy. He realized that the absolute of Vedanta alone could reconcile all philosophies. When he presented himself to the master, the latter said, looking deep into his eyes, "Now then, the mother has shown you everything. Just as a treasure is locked up in a box, so will this realization you have just had be locked up, and the key shall remain with me. You have work to do. When you will have finished my work, the treasure box will be unlocked again, and you will know everything then, just as you do now." He warned him to be careful of his body for some time and to exercise the utmost discretion in his choice of food and companions, accepting only the purest. Afterwards, Sri Ramakrishna said to the other disciples, "Naren will pass away only of his own will. The moment he realizes who he is, he will refuse to stay a moment longer in the body. The time will come when he will shake the world to its foundations through the strength of his intellectual and spiritual powers. I have prayed that the Divine Mother may keep this realization of the Absolute veiled from Naren. There is much work to be done by him, but this veil is so thin that it may give away at any time." It was Naren's intense desire to realize the absolute Brahman that decided Sri Ramakrishna to give it to him. But the master had no intention of permitting him to stay there. As Naren's work was to be in the sphere of compassion and service to humanity, he could not remain in Nirvikalpa Samadhi if he was to do it. It is only a Ramakrishna who is able to come from and go to the Absolute at will, and even he assured his return to ordinary consciousness by creating some desire of the simplest and most childlike nature before going into Samadhi and repeating it insistently so that there was nothing left to chance. He would say, I shall smoke. I shall have water to drink." It was 2 years and 6 months since the master had bound Naren over to the mother, an event for which Sri Ramakrishna had waited for many years. For after giving over the whole treasure of his realizations, he would be free to depart. Naren used to say later on, "From the time he gave me over to the mother, he retained his vigor of body only 6 months. The rest of the time he suffered." Indeed, the power of Master was being diverted into a new channel, into Naren, who had been prepared for this by more than 4 years of spiritual training. Samadhi is the culmination of spirituality, but Naren was born for the fulfillment of a higher and greater purpose. He was to be not only a Siddha Purusha, a perfect soul, but a savior of souls as well. He was not only to cross the ocean of Maya himself, but to help others to do so. From that standpoint, individual liberation was destined for Naren to be comparatively insignificant. Sri Ramakrishna was fully aware of this, as was shown by his telling Naren that he would make him realize a higher and nobler state than Samadhi. He wanted Naren to be a Jnani and also a Bhakta in one, to see God in his various forms as well as in the absolute state. After his Nirvikalpa Samadhi, Swamiji composed a beautiful poem in Bengali describing the state he was in. The English translation of the poem goes like this: "Lo, the sun is not, nor the comely moon, all light extinct in the great void of space, floats shadow-like the image universe. In the void of mind involute there floats, the fleeting universe rises and floats, sinks again ceaseless in the current eye. Slowly, slowly the shadow multitude entered the primal womb and flowed ceaseless, the only current, the I am. Lo, this stopped, even that current flows no more. Void merged into void, beyond speech and mind. Whose heart understands, he verily does." Om Sthapakaya cha dharmasya sarvadharmasvarupine Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishnaya te namaha.